Hey guys, so just doing a quick, maybe 10-minute review video on some biodiversity concepts here. Talk a little bit about extinctions and some laws um, that associated with that. That sounds a little confusing, but so anyways, let me just get going here, and then I will do some ecosystem services. So one of the FRQs we just did, and I was grading. Some of you seem to be a little confused with species richness and evenness. Species richness, the number of species in a given area, right? So if you have a certain area, forest, desert, I don't know, you pick a certain area and you have, if you're able to figure out how many different species are in that area, that would be species richness. So if you have an area with one type of species of tree, let's say, or grass, that's would have a very low species richness, right? So the number of species in a given area. So I think of that as biodiversity for the most part. So more different kinds of species means more diversity, right? But evenness also plays a role. It's the relative proportion of the individuals within the different species in a given area. So knowing species richness or evenness can give environmental scientists the baseline and how much it has changed if they monitor it over the course of, I don't know, let's say a decade. So your FRQ is very similar to this picture, kind of. Might have been flipped though. Like this one was A and this was B, I guess. Species richness and species evenness, two different measures of diversity. Although both communities contain the same number of species, community one has more evenly distributed species, therefore is more diverse than community two. So, um, if we look at this here, so we got A, B, C, and D, right? So we got A are these trees, and you can see community two. There's much more A than B, C, or D, but it does have B, it does have C, and it does have D. So community two and one both have the same number of species, we'll say. They both have four different species. However, because this community one is more evenly distributed, we would say it has more diversity. So, again, back to what I said. So, species richness, in my mind, I think biodiversity. However, it kind of correlates with your species evenness, right? So I just wanted to make sure I explained that and showed you these two slides again. That you really need both to be more biodiverse, right? So richness is the number of species, and then evenness is how evenly distributed that is. And that was kind of it for that. I thought I'd throw in here. There's a lot of stuff there, but I'd throw in there just a little review on this. That you know, many scientists believe we're in our sixth mass extinction right now due to anthropogenic activity. So these one, two, three, four, five were basically because of Earth systems. Okay, something going on with the Earth or an asteroid, right? Took out the dinosaurs. People talk about that. So these the previous five mass extinctions, because the environmental conditions on Earth changed, there was millions and millions of species that couldn't adapt to that, right? We talked about adaptations. This kind of diagram here. So if it gets outside of this, then they're not going to be able to survive, right? So um, that was the five previous mass extinctions. Again, scientists think we're currently in our sixth. And if we go to this other slide here, I'll talk about ecosystem services in a minute, but here we go. So six mass extinction. I had you guys read an article on this earlier in the year. Basically, in general, genetic diversity of species, domestic and natural, is just a decrease, right? Wild and domesticated both are declining. And right here, they estimate the world is currently experiencing approximately 50,000 species extinctions per year, which is crazy. Um, Current rate of extinction is 1,000 times higher during the past 50 years than any other time in human history. And some of them is due to are due to natural causes, but a lot of this, again, we think is anthropogenic. The reason we want high genetic diversity is because of lots of things, but basically, higher genetic diversity improves the probability of surviving future changes in the environment, any sort of disease that gets in a population. If it's more diverse, there's a better chance it will survive or carry on. It won't wipe out all of the individuals of that species is another example there. I'm not going to read all of this to you guys here, but basically things are declining. And again, that's the sixth mass extinction. People believe, scientists believe, because of anthropogenic activities. Here's some laws that will help. So there's different lists: threatened, near threatened, least concern, and then obviously, nope, I'm kind of jumping around on you guys here. The Endangered Species Act. Where the heck is it? There it is. Endangered Species Act, species that is danger of extinction within the foreseeable future. The Endangered Species Act, 1973, authorizes U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services to determine which species can be listed as threatened or endangered. And it works. We put the bald eagle on here a long time ago, and they improved, right? So it does work. That's a big help to some of these species. And if we go up to Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species, Wild Fauna and Flora, okay, basically bans the international trade of threatened plants and animals. So that also helps, also 1973. So that also helps with preserving biodiversity and helping with extinction, right? Due to, this is humans doing this, right? We're trading plants and animals, right? They're not doing that themselves, obviously. So I wanted to just briefly talk about that. Last thing here, and I know I'm jumping around, is the ecosystem services. There was a little bit about that in one of the FRQs. I thought it would be worthwhile to spend 5 minutes talking about it. So you got provisions, regulating services, support systems, resilience, and cultural services. So I'll just hammer through these quick. So an ecosystem provides things for us, right? What? Lumber, food, medicinal plants, rubber as an example, furs, right? So, we can exploit this, tragedy of the commons, we talked about it, but this again is just one service that essentially nature can provide us, right? Ecosystems can provide us, right? Of the top 150, 70% come from natural sources. So there you go. Regulating service basically regulates systems on Earth, right? So the nutrient and hydrologic water cycle, carbon cycle, phosphorus cycle, sulfur cycle, nitrogen cycle, right? So those nutrients and water are regulated by ecosystems, right? And think about carbon sequestration, right? Tropical rainforests do a great job of that, right? Oceans as well. So that's a system that regulating service is when the ecosystems regulate something for the globe, right? For the entire biosphere, essentially. Support services. Pollination, right? We can't do that. You didn't have pollinators, bees, butterflies, bats do it too. We can't do all of the pollination that they can do, right? The insects and other organisms. So that's called a support service. Ecosystems provide natural pest control as well, because they provide habitat for predators that prey on pests, right? So there's a balance there, stable state, steady state. So that's something it's very difficult for humans to provide. So that's a support service. Resilience. So if there's species diversity, then obviously that resilience is a lot easier. So the example here is several different species may perform similar functions, but differ in their susceptibility to disturbance. So if a pollutant kills one type of plant, but the other plant survives, then the ecosystem can still continue, right? So if there is a higher species diversity, then resilience will be more likely to occur. Again, something we can't create. And then the last one here, we talked about this, is kind of like aesthetic value, makes people feel good. to see nature in all of its glory. And of course, the economic gain here. So tourism is a lot of tourism. Like, think of Hawaii. People don't go to Hawaii just because it's warm, right? It's because of what it looks like and all the beauty of nature, right? So, anyways, that was the last one. Basically, aesthetic benefit to humans is a big deal there. So if we lose that, then we're losing the aesthetic benefit as well, right? So I just wanted to review that with you guys quickly here. So those are called ecosystem services, and that's it for this review video.